The grey mare's scream split the canyon like a gunshot. Elena Grayson pressed herself against the rock face, heart hammering, watching 20 tons of horseflesh thrash between boulders that could crush bone to powder. Smart money said walk away. Let nature handle it. But smart money never kept a widow alive on the frontier. And Elena had buried smart money 6 feet deep alongside her husband 3 weeks ago. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that saving this horse would put her in the crosshairs of the most dangerous man in the territory. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The horse wasn't supposed to be there. Neither was Eleanor. She'd spent the morning checking trap lines in the canyon, pulling up empty snares for the 3rd day running. Hunger sat in her belly like a fist. The rabbits had moved on, or maybe they'd just gotten smarter than her traps. Either way, Elena was 2 days past desperate and heading somewhere darker. The mare's scream changed everything. Elena found her wedged between 2 massive sandstone boulders, grey coat dark with sweat, eyes rolling white. One leg was caught at an angle that made Elena's stomach turn. The horse thrashed again, and rock dust rained down from above. Easy, Elena breathed. Easy now. The mare's head whipped toward her, ears flat. Elena held up empty hands. I'm not here to hurt you. The horse didn't believe her. Why would she? Elena barely believed herself anymore. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since she'd scraped together enough dirt to cover Thomas's body. No coffin, no preacher, just Elena and a shovel and a prairie wind that wouldn't stop screaming. She'd said words over him. Couldn't remember what words exactly, but she'd said something because that's what you did when you buried your husband alone under a sky so big it made you feel like nothing. Then she'd packed everything that would fit in a burlap sack and walked away from the claim that had killed him. Hollow Creek was supposed to be different. The name sounded gentle, hopeful almost. The reality was a collection of sun-baked buildings slouching against each other like drunks, populated by people who looked at her the way you'd look at a corpse that hadn't figured out it was dead yet. The general store had been her first stop. Big mistake. We don't extend credit to drifters, the shopkeeper had said, not even looking up from his ledger. I'm not a drifter. I'm looking for work. Don't need workers. He'd flicked his eyes toward her once, taking in the patched dress, the worn boots, the gauntness in her face. Especially not your kind. My kind? Widows. He'd said it like a disease. Town's got enough mouths it can't feed. Elena had wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she'd worked a claim for 2 years, that she could handle horses, mend fences, do accounts. But the look in his eyes stopped her. He'd already decided what she was worth. Nothing. She'd tried 4 more places. That first day, the saloon owner laughed in her face. The hotel clerk told her to move along before she scared off customers. A woman outside the church had actually made the sign of the cross when Elena approached, like widowhood might be catching. By nightfall, Elena had found shelter in an abandoned shack at the valley's edge. Shelter was generous. 3 walls and most of a roof, packed dirt floor, gaps wide enough to watch stars through, but it kept the worst of the wind off, and it was hers in the way anything became yours when nobody else wanted it. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, she'd survived on trapped rabbits, wild onions, and the kind of determination that comes from having absolutely nothing left to lose. She'd patched the roof with branches and mud, fixed the door so it actually closed, made the place almost livable in a way that would have horrified her 6 months ago and now felt like a victory. The mare thrashed again, and Elena snapped back to the present. All right, she said. Let's figure this out. She approached slowly, talking in a low, steady stream. Didn't matter what she said. Horses didn't understand words, but they understood tone. Calm, confident. Elena felt neither, but she'd gotten good at pretending. The trapped leg was worse up close. Not broken, thank whatever mercies existed, but wedged tight between rock and boulder. The mare had probably been running, hit this narrow gap at speed, and momentum had done the rest. You really got yourself stuck, didn't you? The horse's eye rolled toward her, showing white. Elena studied the situation. The boulder wasn't moving. It probably weighed more than a wagon. But the rocks pinning the leg looked loose, debris that had tumbled down when the mare first got trapped. If Elena could shift those, she started with the smallest stones, working them free and tossing them aside. The mare watched her, breathing hard, muscles quivering. Elena kept talking. Had a mare back on the claim, Molly. Stubborn as sin, Thomas wanted to sell her, said she was too ornery to be worth the feed. Elena's throat tightened, but she pushed through. I told him every horse is worth something if you're patient enough. More rocks, larger now. Elena's fingers scraped raw against stone. Thomas said patience was just another word for wasting time. Maybe he was right. Maybe if we'd sold Molly and moved to town like he wanted, he'd still be... She cut herself off. This wasn't the time. The mare's leg shifted an inch. The horse felt it too, muscles bunching. Not yet, Elena warned. You pull now, you'll break something. 3 more rocks. Elena was wedged half under the boulder now, dirt in her mouth, sweat stinging her eyes. Her shoulders screamed. The last big rock wouldn't budge. Come on, she hissed, bracing her feet against solid ground and pushing with everything she had. The rock shifted, moved, tumbled free. The mare exploded backward, nearly trampling Elena in the process. She scrambled sideways, hitting the canyon wall hard enough to knock the wind out of her lungs. By the time she could breathe again, the horse was 20 feet away, favoring the trapped leg, but standing. You're welcome, Elena gasped. The mare stared at her for a long moment, then she turned and limped away down the canyon, disappearing around a bend. Elena sat in the dirt, alone again, and started laughing. Couldn't help it. She'd just spent an hour freeing a horse that would never remember her. Never care that she'd helped, never be anything but one more thing that had taken from her and given nothing back. Story of her life, really. She made it back to the shack as the sun was setting, empty-handed, except for bruises and a bone-deep exhaustion. No rabbit in the traps. No roots worth gathering. Her stomach had stopped growling hours ago, which was somehow worse than the hunger. Tomorrow. She'd figure something out tomorrow. She was halfway through the door when she heard it, hoofbeats. Elena turned, and there was the mare. Standing 30 feet from the shack, grey coat almost silver in the twilight, watching her with those dark, intelligent eyes. What are you doing here? The horse didn't answer, just stood there. I don't have any food for you. Don't have food for me. The mare took 3 steps closer. Elena's breath caught. Slowly, carefully, she extended one hand. The horse considered this. Then, with a deliberation that felt almost human, she walked forward and pressed her muzzle into Elena's palm. Well, Elena whispered. All right then. The mare stayed that night, and the next. Elena named her Ash for the color of her coat and because naming things made them feel real, made them feel like they could last. Ash changed things, not practically. The horse ate grass Elena couldn't eat, offered company, but no solutions. But having something alive that chose to stay mattered in ways Elena couldn't explain. She'd spent weeks being unwanted, invisible, disposable. The mare's presence said, different. You're worth staying for. 4 days after freeing Ash from the canyon, Elena was mending a tear in her oni dress when the riders came. 6 men on horseback spreading out in a semicircle around her shack. They wore the hard-used look of people who worked outside for a living, dusty clothes, weathered faces, hands that knew how to handle rope and worse. The man in the center sat his horse like he'd been born there. Colt Brennan. Elena didn't know his name yet, but she knew the type. Rich, powerful, dangerous. Everything in his posture said he was used to getting what he wanted. "That's my horse," he said. No preamble, no greeting. Elena stood slowly, still holding the needle. "What?" "The grey mare. That's my property." Ash was grazing nearby, unconcerned by the riders. Elena's stomach dropped. "I didn't steal her. Didn't ask if you stole her. I said she's mine." Colt's voice was flat, emotionless. "How'd you get her?" "I found her, trapped in a canyon, freed her, and then kept her. She followed me home." One of the other riders, a younger with a cruel mouth, laughed. "Followed her home, you hear that?" Colt didn't laugh. His eyes stayed on Elena, measuring. "Horse has a brand. Iron Ridge Ranch. You're telling me you didn't see it?" Elena had seen it. A stylized IR on Ash's shoulder, half hidden by her mane. She'd noticed it the second day and spent the third pretending she hadn't. "I saw it," she admitted, "and you kept her anyway." "She was injured. I was helping." "By stealing my property?" "I didn't steal anything." The words came out sharper than Elena intended. "Your horse was trapped and hurt, and probably would have died if I hadn't helped her. She came to my home on her own. I didn't force anything." The younger rider moved his hand toward his hip. Elena saw the gun there, and her mouth went dry. Colt saw it too. "Relax, Jamie." "She admitted it, boss. She knew the mare was ours." "I said relax." Colt never raised his voice, but Jamie's hand moved away from the gun. Colt studied Elena for a long moment. She forced herself to meet his eyes, even though everything in her wanted to look away. He had the kind of gaze that peeled back layers, saw things you didn't want seen. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elena Grayson." "You new to Hollow Creek?" "About 3 weeks." "Family?" The word hit like a punch. "No." Something flickered across Colt's face. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. "You know what happens to horse thieves in this territory, Mrs. Grayson?" "I'm not a thief. You're in possession of stolen property. Law's pretty clear." "The law," Eleanor said, feeling reckless and desperate and tired of being pushed, "can sort itself out after I finish this conversation. You want your horse back? Fine. Take her. She's right there. But don't you dare call me a thief when all I did was help." The silence that followed felt dangerous. Then Colt did something Elena didn't expect. He dismounted. "Wait here," he told his men. Then, to Elena, "Show me where you found her." "What?" "The canyon. Show me." Elena glanced at the other riders. They looked as confused as she felt. "It's an hour's ride," she said. "Then we better get moving." Colt walked toward Ash, who lifted her head and nickered. He ran a hand down her neck, checking her over with practiced efficiency. "Legs healed well." "You do that?" "I wrapped it. Used some poultice." "What kind?" "Comfrey and yarrow. My mother used to." Eleanor stopped. Old life. Dead life. It worked. Colt nodded slowly. Then he looked at her shack. Really looked at it, taking in the patched roof and sagging walls. "You live here?" "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. "Get your horse. We're riding." Elena didn't have a horse. She had Ash, who technically belonged to the man standing in front of her, but when Colt gestured toward the mare, Elena understood. She climbed on bareback, feeling exposed and ridiculous. Colt mounted his own horse, a big roan gelding, and they headed toward the canyon without another word. The ride was awkward. Elena expected interrogation, accusations, something. Instead, Colt rode in silence, occasionally glancing at her, but saying nothing. Finally, Elena broke. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Asking me to show you." instead of just taking your horse. Colt was quiet for so long, Elena thought he wouldn't answer. Then, horse thieves lie. Usually say they found the animal wandering or bought it from someone else. Never admit they saw the brand. I didn't steal her. I know. He said it simply, like fact. You would have run when we showed up, or had a story ready. You didn't do either. They reached the canyon 20 minutes later. Elena led him to the spot where she'd found Ash, the boulders still showing scuff marks from the mare's thrashing. Colt dismounted and studied the ground. He was thorough, Elena had to give him that. He examined the rocks she'd moved, the way they'd tumbled, the marks on the boulders where Ash's hooves had scraped. Then he looked at Elena's hands. Let me see. She held them out. The scrapes from moving rocks had scabbed over, but they were still visible. Colt nodded, more to himself than to her. You really dug her out. I told you I did. People tell me a lot of things. He walked back to his horse, but didn't mount. Instead, he turned to face her. Ash is my best broodmare, worth more than most people make in a year. She went missing 4 days ago. Gate left open, probably by someone who didn't latch it properly. I've had 20 men searching. Elena felt her stomach tighten. 4 days ago, right when Ash had shown up at her shack. I thought about taking her back to you, she admitted. Tried to figure out where the ranch was, but I didn't know where to look, and you figured nobody would believe you anyway. It wasn't a question, but Elena answered anyway. No, they wouldn't. Colt studied her for a long moment, then he said something that changed everything. You know anything about horses? Some? How much is some? Elena hesitated. Admitting competence felt dangerous, somehow, like showing a weapon. But lying felt worse. Enough. I can ride, break a green horse if I need to, handle most medical issues. I'm better with accounts, but accounts? Numbers, records. I helped run a claim for 2 years, kept the books. Colt's expression shifted slightly. Not quite interest, but close. You looking for work? The question hit Elena like cold water. What? Iron Ridge needs hands, good ones. Winter's coming and we're short-staffed. You're offering me a job? Depends. You willing to work? Elena's mind spun. This felt like a trap, like something too good to be true that would somehow make everything worse. Why? Because you saved my best horse and didn't run when I showed up with 6 armed men. That's more honest than most people I meet. Colt walked to his horse and mounted. Pays fair, room and board included. You'd start tomorrow. I don't understand. What's to understand? I need workers. You need work. He gathered his reins. Unless you'd rather stay in that shack? Elena thought about the empty traps, the gnawing hunger, the way the town looked at her like she was already dead. What kind of work? Horse work, mostly. Training, breeding, care. Some of the mares are difficult. Could use someone with a gentle hand. He paused. And if you really can handle accounts, my books are a disaster. Last hand who kept them couldn't add 2 and 2. I can add, Elena said quietly. Then you're hired, if you want it. She should have been suspicious, should have asked more questions, demanded details, protected herself. But standing there in the canyon where she'd saved Ash, looking at a man who'd somehow seen past every assumption the town had made about her, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Dangerous, fragile, probably stupid hope. I want it, she said. Colt nodded once. Be at Iron Ridge by sunrise. It's 5 miles north of town. You'll see the gate. Then he turned his horse and rode away, leaving Elena standing in the canyon with Ash and a job offer that felt like either salvation or the worst mistake of her life. She wouldn't know which until it was too late. Iron Ridge Ranch sprawled across the valley like something out of a fever dream. Massive, rambling, held together by wire and wishful thinking. Elena arrived just as the sun broke over the eastern hills, Ash walking steady beneath her. The main house was 2 stories of weathered wood that had probably been impressive 20 years ago. Now it leaned slightly to the left, paint peeling, shutters hanging crooked. The barn looked sturdier, but just barely. Fences ran in every direction, some intact, most sagging, and everywhere were horses. In the corrals, in the pastures, running loose in groups of 3 and 4. Elena counted at least 40 before she stopped trying. A man stepped out of the barn as she approached, old, weathered, with the bow-legged walk of someone who'd spent more time on horseback than on foot. "You the widow?" he asked. Elena stiffened. "I'm Elena Grayson." "That's what I said. Widow." He squinted at her. "Colt said you'd be coming. I'm Dutch. Ranch foreman. You ride? Yes? Break horses? Some? Handle a pitchfork? I can learn." Dutch grunted. "You'll learn fast or you'll leave. We don't have time for coddling." He started walking toward the barn, clearly expecting her to follow. "Colt's gone to town. Won't be back till tonight. That means I'm in charge and I run a tight operation. We start at dawn, work till dusk, break for meals. You get Sundays off unless there's an emergency, injuries happen, you deal with them, complaints don't exist. Questions?" Elena had about 100, but something in Dutch's manner told her to pick carefully. "Where do I sleep?" "Bunkhouse. Back of the property. You get your own room since you're the only woman." He shot her a look. "Stay out of the men's side. They'll stay out of yours. Anyone breaks that rule, you tell me immediately." "All right." Food's in the main house. Breakfast at 5, dinner at 7. You miss it, you go hungry. They reached the barn, and Dutch pushed open the door. "Most important rule. You see Colt, you do what he says. Immediately. No questions. No hesitation. He's the boss. And around here, that word means something." Inside, the barn smelled like hay and horse and leather oil. Stalls lined both sides, most of them occupied. A few horses stuck their heads out, ears pricked with curiosity. "These are the breeding mares," Dutch explained. "Most expensive animals on the ranch. You'll be working with them primarily. Feeding, grooming, training. Some of them are mean as snakes. Others are just scared. Your job is to figure out which is which." He led her to a stall at the far end. Inside was a beautiful bay mare with a white blaze pacing restlessly. "This is Siren. She's 2 weeks off a foal, still won't let anyone touch her." "What happened to the foal?" "Stillborn." Dutch's voice softened slightly. "She's been nasty ever since, won't eat properly, kicks anyone who gets close. Colt's about ready to give up on her." Eleanor studied the mare. Siren's eyes showed white around their edges, and her movements had that jerky, unpredictable quality of an animal in pain. Not physical pain, something deeper. "Can I try?" Eleanor asked. Dutch raised an eyebrow. "Try what?" "Working with her." "You'll get kicked." "Maybe." He studied her for a long moment, then he shrugged. "Your funeral. I'll be in the office if you need me. Yell if she kills you." He walked away, leaving Elena alone with the grieving mare. Elena didn't approach the stall immediately. Instead, she found a hay bale and sat down where Siren could see her. The mare stopped pacing, watching her with suspicious eyes. "I know," Elena said quietly. "It's not fair." Siren snorted. "Lost something that mattered. Something you can't get back." Elena's throat tightened. "Everyone expects you to just move on. Get over it. Start working again like nothing happened." The mare's ears flicked forward slightly. "But you can't. Because it did happen. and pretending it doesn't make the hurt stop. Elena sat there for 20 minutes, just talking, didn't say anything important, didn't try to touch the mare or enter the stall, just sat and existed in the same space, letting Siren get used to her presence. Finally, slowly, Elena stood. She opened the stall door, not all the way, just a crack. Siren tensed, but didn't charge. "I'm not going to hurt you," Elena said. "Just want to check your water." She slipped inside, moving slowly, and picked up the water bucket. It was nearly empty. She carried it out, refilled it from the pump, and brought it back. Siren watched every movement but didn't kick. Elena set the bucket down and backed out of the stall. "Good girl," she said softly. "That's all for now." As she closed the stall door, she heard Dutch's voice behind her. Most people try to force it, pin her in the corner, get a halter on, show her who's boss. Elena turned. The foreman was leaning against a post, arms crossed. "That doesn't work," Elena said. "No," Dutch agreed. "It doesn't. But it takes most folks 3 broken ribs to figure that out." He studied her with new interest. "Maybe you'll work out after all, widow." "Elena? What?" "My name is Elena." Dutch's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "All right, Elena. Let's see if you can handle the rest of them." The rest of them turned out to be 15 mares in various stages of training, 3 pregnant, 2 recovering from injuries, and 1, a tall black mare named Tempest, who'd apparently hospitalized the last person who tried to ride her. Elena spent the day feeding, grooming, mucking stalls, and learning the personality of each horse. By dinner, her back ached, her hands were blistered, and she smelled like she'd been rolling in manure. She'd never felt better. The bunkhouse was exactly what Dutch had promised. A long, low building divided into 2 sections. Elena's room was barely big enough for a bed and a trunk, but it had a door that closed and a window that opened. Luxury compared to the shack. Dinner was served in the main house kitchen, a massive room dominated by a scarred wooden table and a cast iron stove. Dutch was there, along with 4 ranch hands Elena hadn't met yet. They looked her over with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. "This is the new hand," Dutch announced. "Elena. She'll be working the mares. Anyone gives her trouble answers to me." The men nodded. One of them, young, maybe 20, with sandy hair and an easy smile, extended his hand. "Marcus, good to have another set of hands around here." Elena shook it. "Thank you." The others introduced themselves. Sam, older and quiet. Tyler, built like a bull. And Jamie, the cruel-mouthed rider from yesterday. He didn't offer his hand. "Widow can't do real ranch work," Jamie said, loading his plate. "This is a waste of time." "You got an opinion on how Colt runs his ranch?" Dutch asked mildly. Jamie shut up. They ate in relative silence. The food was simple. Beans, bread, salted meat, but there was plenty of it. Elena's stomach had shrunk over the past weeks, and she couldn't finish half of what she took. Marcus noticed. "You all right?" "Fine, just full." He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. After dinner, Elena walked back to the bunkhouse as the sun set. The valley turned gold, then purple, then indigo. Horses called to each other across the pastures. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Elena stood in the doorway of her room and realized something. For the first time since Thomas died, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. The feeling lasted exactly 3 hours. She was half asleep when the shouting started. Elena jerked awake, heart hammering. Outside, men were yelling, horses screaming. She threw on her boots and ran. The barn was chaos. 3 horses, loose in the main aisle, bucking and rearing. Dutch trying to corner one with a rope. Marcus and Sam blocking another. And in the middle of it all, Jamie, bleeding from a gash on his forehead. "What happened?" Elena yelled. "Idiot tried to move Tempest," Dutch snarled. At night, alone. The black mare was the one causing the most trouble, lashing out with hooves that could crack skulls. Her eyes rolled white, foam flecking her mouth. Elena didn't think. She grabbed a halter from the wall and walked straight toward Tempest. "Don't," Dutch started, but Elena was already moving, slow and steady, halter hidden behind her back. She didn't look at Tempest's eyes. That would be a challenge. Instead, she focused on the mare's shoulder, reading her body. Tempest spun toward her, ears flat. "Easy," Elena breathed. "Easy now." The mare struck out with one front hoof, missing Elena's head by inches. Elena didn't flinch, didn't retreat, just stood there, breathing steady, waiting. Tempest paused. In that heartbeat of hesitation, Elena stepped forward and slipped the halter over the mare's head. Tempest could have fought, could have reared and smashed Elena into the wall. But something in Elena's calm confidence, or maybe just exhaustion, made the mare accept it. Elena led her back to the stall, slow and easy, talking the whole time. "There we go, that's it, good girl." Good. She got Tempest locked in, then helped Dutch corner the other two horses. It took another 10 minutes to get everyone settled. When it was done, Dutch turned to Jamie. "Get out." "It was an accident." "I said get out. Pack your things. You're done." Jamie's face went red. "You can't fire me." "I just did. Be off the property by morning." Dutch's voice was flat, final. "You're lucky I don't let that mare finish what she started." Jamie left, cursing. The other hands drifted away. Dutch stood in the barn aisle looking at Elena. "That was either very brave or very stupid," he said. "Probably both." He almost smiled. "Colt's going to hear about this." "Am I in trouble?" "No." Dutch turned to go, then paused. "You did good, Elena. Real good." It was the closest thing to praise she'd heard in months. Elena made it back to the bunkhouse on shaking legs. She collapsed on the bed, still wearing her boots, and stared at the ceiling. One day. She'd made it one day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, new ways to prove herself or fail. But tonight, lying in a bed that didn't leak rain, in a room she'd earned, Elena Grayson let herself believe something dangerous. Maybe she could survive this after all. The first week nearly broke her. Not the work. Elena had expected hard labor, long hours, muscles that screamed every morning. What she hadn't expected was the weight of everyone watching, waiting for her to fail. Every task felt like a test she couldn't afford to fail. Dutch ran her through the ranch's operations with the efficiency of a man who'd explained things 1,000 times and didn't plan to repeat himself. The mares needed feeding twice daily, specific amounts, specific times. The pregnant ones required extra supplements. The injured ones needed their wounds checked and rewrapped. Stalls had to be mucked every morning before breakfast. Tack needed cleaning. Fences needed mending. The list never ended. "You fall behind, you stay late," Dutch told her on the third morning. "Nobody waits for you. Nobody picks up your slack." Elena didn't fall behind. She woke an hour before dawn and worked past dark. Her hands raw, her back a constant ache. She learned which horses would tolerate her touch and which ones would bite. She memorized feeding schedules, medical notes, breeding records. She made herself indispensable because being useful was the only thing keeping her employed. Colt returned on the fourth day. Elena was in Siren's stall when she heard his voice in the barn aisle, talking to Dutch. She froze, suddenly aware of how filthy she looked. Hay in her hair, manure on her boots, shirt stained with sweat. "The new hand working out?" Colt asked. "Better than expected," Dutch replied. "Quieted down, 3 of the problem mares. Fixed the breeding records, hasn't complained once." "Jamie?" "Gone. Tried to move Tempest at night, nearly got himself killed. The widow handled it." There was a pause. Elena could feel Colt's attention shift, could almost sense him looking towards Siren's stall. She in there now? Yeah. Footsteps approached. Elena kept her focus on Siren, brushing the mare's coat in long, steady strokes. The mare's head was down, relaxed. Progress. Mrs. Grayson? Elena turned. Colt stood outside the stall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He looked different than he had in the canyon. Cleaner, harder, every inch the ranch owner. Mr. Brennan. Colt. He studied the mare. Siren letting you touch her? Some days more than others. Dutch says you've made progress with the difficult ones. I'm trying. Colt's eyes moved to Elena's hands. She'd wrapped the worst blisters, but the bandages were filthy and coming loose. You injured? Just blisters. They'll heal. Dutch can show you where the medical supplies are. I know where they are. Something flickered across Colt's face. Approval, maybe, or just acknowledgement. Good. Keep doing what you're doing. He turned to leave, then paused. The account books are in my office. Main house, second floor. When you have time, I'd like you to take a look. I can do that tonight. Tonight you should rest. I can rest when I'm dead. The words came out sharper than Elena intended. Colt looked at her for a long moment, and Elena braced herself for anger or dismissal. Instead, he almost smiled. Tomorrow then, after breakfast. He left. Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. He likes you, Dutch said from the barn doorway. Elena jumped. I didn't hear you. Colt doesn't smile. Not at people, not anymore. Dutch walked closer, studying her with those sharp old eyes. You remind him of someone, maybe? Or you're just different enough from the usual ranch hands that he doesn't know what to make of you. I'm just trying to do my job. No! You're trying to prove you deserve to be here. Dutch's voice softened slightly. You already proved that, Elena. The question is whether you can keep it up. That night, Elena fell into bed without bothering to wash. Her body felt like one giant bruise. But as she drifted towards sleep, she realized Dutch was right about one thing. She was trying to prove something, not just to Colt or Dutch or the other ranch hands, to herself. The account books were a disaster. Elena sat in Colt's office the next morning, staring at ledgers that looked like they'd been kept by 3 different people who'd never spoken to each other. Numbers didn't match, dates were wrong, entire transactions were missing explanations. Who kept these? She asked. Colt leaned against his desk, arms crossed. Different hands over the years. Last one couldn't add. One before that couldn't write. One before that drank too much to do either. These are unusable. I know. You don't know how much money you have. I know roughly. Roughly doesn't work. Elena flipped through pages, her frustration growing. You're buying feed without knowing if you can afford it. Selling horses without tracking the profits. One bad season, and you won't know you're broke until the bank comes calling. Colt was quiet for a moment. Can you fix it? I can rebuild the system, but I'll need access to everything. Bills of sale, purchase receipts, breeding records, payroll information, and I'll need time. How much time? Weeks? Maybe a month? Colt nodded slowly. You'll have it. Work on the books in the evenings, after the horses are handled. That's a lot of hours. You said you can rest when you're dead. Elena looked up sharply, but Colt's expression was neutral. Not mocking, just stating facts. Fine, she said, but I need better light in here. And a proper chair. This one's about to collapse. Done. Anything else? Yes. Stop buying grain from Tucker's mill. They're overcharging you by 15%. Colt's eyebrows rose. You got that from 10 minutes with the books? I got that from basic math. Elena pointed to a page. Same grain, different suppliers, different prices. Tucker's is consistently highest. Either they think you're stupid or they know you don't check. Anything else? Colt's voice had gone very quiet. Elena hesitated, then pushed forward. The breeding program is backwards. You're breeding your best mares too frequently. They're exhausted. That's why Siren lost her foal. She was bred again before she'd fully recovered from the last one. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Dutch handles the breeding program, Colt said flatly. Then Dutch is making mistakes. Dutch has been running horses for 40 years, and I've been running numbers for 5. The records don't lie, Mr. Brennan. Your mares are being overworked, and it's costing you foals. Colt pushed off the desk and walked to the window. For a long moment he didn't speak. Elena waited, heart pounding, wondering if she'd just talked herself out of a job. Finally, Colt said, "Show me." Elena spent the next hour walking Colt through the breeding records, pointing out patterns he'd never noticed. Mares bred too young, rest periods too short, nutrition inadequate during pregnancy. It was all there in the numbers, if you knew how to look. When she finished, Colt was silent. Then he said something that surprised her. "You're right. I know I'm right. That doesn't make it easier to hear." He turned from the window. Dutch is proud. Telling him he's been doing things wrong for years won't go well. Then don't tell him. Just adjust the schedule going forward. Blame it on new information or changing circumstances. Give him a way to accept it without losing face. Colt studied her with new intensity. "You've done this before. Managed people." "I managed a husband who thought he knew everything." The words came out before Elena could stop them. She froze, waiting for the questions. Colt just nodded. "That'll do it." He left her to work on the books. Elena sat there for a moment, shaking slightly, amazed she hadn't been fired. Then she got back to the numbers, because numbers didn't care about pride or politics or the past. They just were. The trouble with Hollow Creek started small. Elena rode into town with Dutch the following week to pick up supplies. She'd been avoiding town since starting at Iron Ridge, but they needed grain, and Dutch's back was acting up, so she'd volunteered. The general store was the same as she remembered. Dusty shelves, suspicious owner, the smell of coffee and judgment. The shopkeeper looked up when Elena entered, and his expression soured. "We're picking up the Iron Ridge order," Elena said. "Don't have it ready." Dutch called it in 3 days ago. Said I don't have it ready. The shopkeeper turned his back, making a show of organizing cans that were already organized. Elena felt her jaw tighten. "When will it be ready?" "When it's ready." That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Dutch appeared in the doorway. "Problem?" The shopkeeper's demeanor changed instantly. "No problem, Dutch. Just explaining to your helper that the order needs another day." "We need it today," Dutch said mildly. "Ranch is low on feed." "Should have planned better." Something dangerous crossed Dutch's face. Elena had seen him handle spooked horses and injured men with perfect calm, but this was different. This was the look of a man deciding whether violence was worth the trouble. Elena put a hand on his arm. "It's fine. We'll go to Morrison's instead." "Morrison's is 10 miles farther. Then we'll ride 10 miles farther." The shopkeeper smirked. "Good luck. Morrison don't sell to ranch trash neither." Elena turned so fast the shopkeeper actually flinched. "What did you say?" "You heard me. Widow shows up, suddenly Iron Ridge is hiring anyone. Standards going down the drain." "You don't know anything about me." "Know your bad luck. Everyone does. First your husband dies. Now you're latching onto Colt Brennan like a tick. Whole town's talking about it." Dutch's hand moved toward his belt. Elena stepped between him and the shopkeeper. "Let's go," she said quietly. "Elena, now, please." They left. Outside, Dutch was vibrating with anger. That son of a... Don't. He can't talk to you like that. He already did. Elena walked toward the horses, trying to keep her hands from shaking. Going back in there won't help anything. The hell it won't. Elena turned. What are you going to do? Hit him? Get arrested? Get fired from the ranch? Prove him right? That Iron Ridge is full of trash? Dutch stopped. That's exactly what he wants. Someone from the ranch to lose control so he can tell everyone he was right about us. Elena mounted her horse. We get the supplies somewhere else. We don't give him the satisfaction. They rode to Morrison's. The owner was friendlier, but even he had questions. Heard Brennan hired a woman, Morrison said while loading bags. That true? I work at Iron Ridge, Elena confirmed. Doing what? Horsework. Accounts. Morrison's eyebrows rose. Accounts? Colt let you near the books? Yes. Huh. Morrison finished loading and took Dutch's money. Well, good luck with that. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Elena could feel Dutch's anger simmering, but he didn't push. Finally, about a mile from Iron Ridge, he spoke. Town always been like that. To me? Yes. They shouldn't, but they do. Elena cut him off gently. And getting angry won't change it. I just need to work hard enough that Colt doesn't listen to them. Colt doesn't listen to anyone. Everyone listens to something. Dutch was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You're tougher than you look, widow. I'd have to be. They got back to find the ranch in chaos. 3 horses had broken through a fence and scattered across the valley. Marcus and Sam were trying to round them up, but one, a young stallion named Thunder, was leading them on a chase that had lasted 2 hours. Where's Colt? Dutch asked. Riding fence on the north pasture, Marcus called. Won't be back till dark. Elena dismounted. I'll help. You can't even see them from here. But Elena was already moving, grabbing a rope and swinging onto Ash. The grey mare responded instantly, ears pricked forward, ready to run. They found Thunder 3 miles out, grazing in a meadow with his 2 accomplices. The young stallion saw them coming and bolted. Elena urged Ash forward and the mare exploded into a gallop. Chasing horses was different than breaking them. It required reading the animal's mind, anticipating turns, cutting off escape routes. Thunder was fast, but Ash was faster. Elena leaned low over the mare's neck, feeling the rhythm of hooves, the surge of muscle, the wind tearing at her hair. She cut Thunder off at a creek, forcing him to turn. He tried to double back, but Elena was already there, rope ready. The loop settled over his neck on the second throw. Thunder fought for a minute, then seemed to realize he'd lost. Elena walked him back slowly, the other 2 horses following. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun was setting and every muscle in her body burned. Colt was waiting by the barn. Heard you rode down Thunder, he said. Elena dismounted, trying not to wince. He wasn't that hard to catch. Marcus has been trying to catch him for 3 days. Marcus doesn't have Ash. Colt studied her for a moment. You ride well. I had good teachers. Who taught you? The question was casual, but Elena felt the weight behind it. Colt rarely asked personal questions. When he did, it meant something. My father, she said carefully. Before he died, then my husband. Her throat tightened. Before he died too. Colt nodded slowly. Seems like you've lost a lot of people. Everyone does, eventually. Some more than others. They stood there in the gathering darkness, 2 people held together by loss and work and the unspoken understanding that talking about it wouldn't make it hurt less. Finally, Colt said, Good work today, with Thunder and with the books. The books aren't done, but they're better. That's something. He walked away, leaving Elena alone with the horses and the night and the strange, uncomfortable warmth of being seen. The rumors reached Iron Ridge 2 weeks later. Elena was working in the barn when she overheard Marcus and Tyler talking by the grain bins, saying she's trying to take over the ranch. That's ridiculous, she's just a hand. Yeah, but she's got Colt's ear now. Got him changing the breeding schedule, firing Tucker's mill, letting her handle the money. People in town are saying she's manipulating him. People in town are idiots. Maybe, but they're talking. And when people talk, things happen. Eleanor stepped into view. Both men went silent. Don't stop on my account, she said evenly. Tyler had the grace to look embarrassed. We weren't. You were. It's fine. I'd rather know what people are saying than be surprised later. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. For what it's worth, nobody here believes it. Some people might, Tyler admitted. You did show up out of nowhere, and you do have a lot of influence for someone who's been here a month. I have influence because I'm good at my job. I know that, but perception isn't always reality. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to defend herself. But what was the point? She'd spent 3 weeks proving herself through work, and it hadn't changed what people thought. Nothing she said would matter. Thanks for the warning, she said instead, and went back to work. That night, she found Dutch in the office looking grim. You heard? He asked. About the rumors? Yes. It's worse than rumors. Someone started saying you're working with raiders, that you're setting up Iron Ridge to be robbed. Elena's stomach dropped. That's insane. Doesn't matter if it's insane. People believe it. Dutch rubbed his face. Colt needs to know. Know what? That people are making up stories? He already knows the town hates me. This is different. This is dangerous. If people think you're a threat, let them think whatever they want. I'm not leaving. I'm not saying you should leave. I'm saying you need protection. From what? Gossip? Dutch's expression turned serious. From whoever's spreading these lies. Because they're not doing it randomly, Elena. Someone wants you gone. The question is why? The answer came 3 days later, delivered by a rider Elena didn't recognize. She was working with Siren when the man arrived. Tall, handsome in a calculated way, with cold eyes that measured everything they saw. He dismounted near the barn and asked for Colt. He's out riding fence, Dutch said. Won't be back till afternoon. I'll wait. The stranger's eyes found Elena. You, the widow everyone's talking about? Elena straightened. I'm Eleanor Grayson. I'm Red Vance. He said it like she should know the name. When Elena didn't react, his smile sharpened. No? Colt never mentioned me? No? Interesting. Well, Mrs. Grayson, it's a pleasure to meet the woman who's turned Iron Ridge upside down in just a month. I haven't turned anything upside down. Haven't you? Vance gestured around the ranch. New feeding schedules, new suppliers, new breeding program. Seems like a lot of changes for a simple ranch hand. Elena felt her jaw tighten. Those changes are making the ranch more profitable. Are they? Or are they just making it easier to hide what's really happening? What's that supposed to mean? Vance's smile never wavered. Nothing, just making conversation. Dutch stepped between them. State your business or leave. My business is with Colt, but it's been educational meeting, Mrs. Grayson. Vance tipped his hat. I'm sure we'll see each other again. He walked toward the main house, leaving Elena and Dutch staring after him. Who was that? Elena asked. Dutch's expression was dark. Trouble? The kind Colt's been trying to avoid for years. When Colt returned and found Vance waiting, the temperature on the entire ranch seemed to drop. Eleanor watched from the barn as the two men talked, or rather, argued. She couldn't hear the words, but the body language said enough. Vance left an hour later, riding out with the same calculated ease he'd arrived with. Colt stood in the yard, watching him go, and even from a distance, Elena could see the tension in his shoulders. She found him that evening in his office, staring at the books she'd been organizing. "Mr. Brennan?" He looked up. For a moment, Eleanor barely recognized him. The cold, hard mask she'd seen that first day was back, making him look dangerous and distant. "Did Vance talk to you?" Briefly, he asked questions. "What kind of questions?" Elena repeated the conversation. Colt's expression grew darker with each word. "He's trying to find a weakness," Colt said finally. "Something to use against the ranch." "Why?" Colt was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "Vance and I have history, bad history. I caught him stealing from ranchers 5 years ago, testified against him. He spent 3 years in prison, and now he's back. And he wants revenge." Elena's stomach tightened. "The rumors in town started right after Vance came back to the territory. He's spreading lies about you to destabilize the ranch, make people distrust me, divide the hands. Why target me specifically?" Colt looked at her, and something in his expression made Elena's breath catch. "Because he knows you matter. To the ranch. To..." He stopped, jaw tight. "You're the newest addition, the easiest target. If he can turn people against you, he weakens everything. Then I'll leave." "No." The word came out hard, final. Colt stood, walking to the window. "Vance wants you gone. Giving him what he wants proves him right. Proves I made a mistake hiring you." "Did you?" "Did I what?" "Make a mistake." Colt turned. "No. You've done more for this ranch in a month than most hands do in a year. The horses are calmer. The books make sense. The operation runs smoother." His voice softened slightly. "I don't make many good decisions, Mrs. Grayson, but hiring you was one of them." Elena felt something shift in her chest. Dangerous, unwelcome, absolutely inconvenient. She pushed it down hard. "What do we do about Vance?" "We keep working, we don't give him ammunition, and we watch our backs because he won't stop until he finds something to use." That night, lying in her bunk, Eleanor stared at the ceiling and tried not to think about the way Colt had looked at her, the way his voice had changed when he said she mattered. It didn't mean anything, couldn't mean anything. She was a widow with nothing, and he was a ranch owner with everything to lose. Whatever she was feeling was just gratitude mixed with exhaustion, mixed with the desperate human need to feel valued. Nothing more. She almost believed it. The belief lasted exactly 5 days. Vance's next move came fast and mean, the way a rattlesnake strikes when you're not looking. Elena was checking fence lines on the eastern pasture when she saw smoke rising from the direction of the ranch. Not the lazy gray of a cooking fire. Black, thick, wrong. She kicked Ash into a gallop. By the time she reached the ranch, the small equipment barn was fully engulfed. Flames clawed at the sky, spitting embers onto the dry grass. Dutch and Marcus were running buckets from the well. Tyler was trying to move horses away from the main barn. Sam was nowhere to be seen. "Where's Colt?" Elena shouted over the roar. "Town!" Marcus yelled back. "Won't be back for hours." Elena dismounted and grabbed a bucket. The heat was intense, pushing against her face like a physical thing. They worked in frantic silence, passing water hand to hand, throwing it at flames that didn't care. It took 2 hours to contain the fire. By then, the equipment barn was a skeleton of charred beams and ash. 3 saddles destroyed, a season's worth of stored hay gone. Tools turned to slag. They stood in the yard afterward, covered in soot, breathing hard. Dutch's face was grim. "That wasn't an accident," he said. "How do you know?" Marcus asked. Because equipment barns don't catch fire in the middle of the afternoon when nobody's using them. Dutch walked closer to the ruins, studying the ground. Someone said this. Elena's stomach clenched. Vance. Can't prove it, but yeah, probably. Tyler spat into the dirt. Son of a bitch is trying to burn us out. No, Dutch said slowly. If he wanted to burn us out, he'd have hit the main barn, taken the horses. This was a message. What message? That he can hurt us whenever he wants. Colt arrived an hour later. He took one look at the destroyed barn and his expression went flat. Elena had learned that look meant he was furious beyond words. Anyone hurt? He asked. No, Dutch said. We got lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. Someone was here. Someone said this. Colt's eyes found Eleanor. You see anyone? No. I was out checking fences. Something flickered across his face. Suspicion, maybe, or just the habit of doubting everyone. It was there and gone so fast, Eleanor almost missed it. Almost. I didn't do this, she said quietly. Colt's jaw tightened. I didn't say you did. You were thinking it. I was thinking someone wants me to think it. He looked at Dutch. Post watches tonight. 2-hour rotations. Nobody works alone until we figure out what's happening. That night, Eleanor took the midnight watch, walking the perimeter with a rifle she barely knew how to use. The ranch felt different in darkness. Bigger, more vulnerable, full of shadows that could hide anything. She was checking the main barn when she heard horses moving restlessly in their stalls. Not panicked, just uneasy. Elena slowed her steps, listening. Footsteps, not hers. She raised the rifle, heart hammering. Who's there? A figure stepped from the shadows. Tall, male. Elena's finger tightened on the trigger. Easy, Colt said. It's me. Elena lowered the gun, hands shaking. You scared me. You're jumpy. Someone burned down a barn today. I'm allowed to be jumpy. Colt walked closer. In the moonlight, his face looked harder, older. You shouldn't be out here alone. I'm on watch. I know. That's why I came to check on you. Something in his tone made Elena's chest tighten. You don't trust me. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I saw your face when you asked if I saw anyone. You wondered if I did this. Colt was quiet for a long moment. I wondered if Vance made it look like you did this. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. He stepped closer and Elena could smell smoke on his clothes, see the exhaustion in his eyes. Vance is smart. He knows the easiest way to destroy me is to make me doubt the people I trust. So he'll plant evidence, spread rumors, make me question everything. His voice dropped. I can't afford to fall for it, but I also can't afford to ignore real threats. So what am I? Trust or threat? I don't know yet. The honesty stung more than a lie would have. Elena turned away. Then maybe you shouldn't have hired me. Maybe I shouldn't have. Colt's voice was rough. But I did. And now we're both stuck dealing with the consequences. They finished the watch in tense silence. When Elena's rotation ended, she walked back to the bunkhouse feeling more alone than she had since arriving at Iron Ridge. Trust, she was learning, was harder to build than fences and easier to burn than barns. The second attack came 3 days later. Elena was working with Siren when she heard shouting from the north pasture. She ran outside to find Tyler stumbling toward the barn, blood pouring from a gash on his arm. What happened? Someone cut the fence, Tyler gasped. 15 horses scattered. I tried to stop them and got caught in the wire. Dutch appeared with bandages. Where? North pasture, near the creek. Eleanor grabbed Ash and rode hard. The fence was destroyed, not broken, deliberately cut in 3 places. Fresh horse tracks scattered in every direction. Whoever did this had timed it perfectly. waiting until the hands were spread thin. She spent 4 hours rounding up horses, found 12 of them grazing in a canyon, 2 more near the road. The last one was nowhere. When she got back, Colt was in the yard with a man Elena didn't recognize, tall, official looking, badge on his chest, sheriff. "Telling you, Brennan, these accusations are serious," the sheriff was saying. "They're also lies," Colt replied. "Maybe, but 3 people in town saw your new hand near Tucker's mill the night before their barn burned down." Elena's blood went cold. "I've never been to Tucker's mill." The sheriff turned. "That's not what witnesses say? Then your witnesses are wrong or lying. Why would they lie? Because someone's paying them to." Colt's voice was hard. "This is Vance's work. He's setting her up." The sheriff's expression didn't change. "Red Vance has been in town all week. Multiple people can confirm it. He couldn't have cut your fence or burned your barn. He has men who could. Do you have proof?" Colt's silence was answer enough. The sheriff sighed. "Look, I'm not saying Mrs. Grayson did anything, but the timing is suspicious. She shows up, your ranch starts having problems, and now there's talk she's connected to raiders planning something bigger." "Raiders?" Elena's voice cracked. "What raiders?" "There's a gang operating out of the Badlands. They've hit 4 ranches in 2 months. Word is, they have inside help." The sheriff's eyes stayed on Eleanor. "Someone feeding them information, telling them when to strike. That's insane, is it? You're new here, nobody knows where you came from or why. You have access to Brennan's books, his breeding schedules, his finances. You know exactly when the ranch is vulnerable." Eleanor felt the ground shifting under her feet. This wasn't just rumors anymore. This was an accusation. A narrative so carefully constructed, she could see Vance's fingerprints all over it. "I'm not helping raiders," she said. "I'm trying to save this ranch." "From what?" "From failing. The books were a mess. The breeding program was backwards. The finances were bleeding money. I fixed those things because Colt asked me to, not because I was planning to rob him." The sheriff looked at Colt. "That true?" "Every word." "And you trust her?" The pause before Colt answered lasted a heartbeat too long. "Yes." The sheriff caught it too. His expression shifted. Not quite pity, but close. "Be careful, Brennan. Trust makes people blind, and Vance knows it." He left. Elena stood in the yard, feeling like she'd been gutted. "You hesitated," she said quietly. Colt didn't deny it. "The sheriff asked if I trust you. I said yes." "But you don't mean it." "I mean it as much as I can mean anything right now." He turned to face her. "I want to trust you, Eleanor. I do. But every time I start to, something else happens. Another fire, another cut fence, another witness claiming they saw you somewhere you shouldn't be. So, you believe them over me?" "I believe someone is working very hard to make me doubt you. And it's working." Elena felt something crack inside her chest. "Then fire me." "What?" "You heard me. If you can't trust me, fire me. Send me back to that shack in town. Let Vance win." Her voice shook. "But don't keep me here out of pity or stubbornness while you wait for me to prove I'm the traitor everyone thinks I am." Colt stepped closer. "You're not a traitor. You just said you don't trust me." "I said I want to trust you. There's a difference." "Not to me, there isn't." Eleanor turned to leave. Colt grabbed her arm. Not hard, just enough to stop her. "Wait." "For what? For you to decide I'm worth believing? I've been proving myself for 6 weeks. How much longer do I have to work before you see me instead of whatever threat you're afraid I might be? It's not about you." "Yes, it is. Everything is about me right now. The fires, the rumors, the cut fences. Vance is using me to destroy you, and you're letting him because you're too afraid to trust anyone." Colt's grip tightened slightly. I have reasons. I don't care about your reasons. Elena pulled free. Everyone has reasons. Everyone's been hurt. Everyone has scars. But at some point you have to decide whether you're going to live in fear of being betrayed again or actually let someone stand beside you. She walked away before he could respond. Before the tears burning behind her eyes could fall. Before she could say something she wouldn't be able to take back. That night, Eleanor packed her things. Not much. She'd arrived with nothing and accumulated little. The burlap sack she'd carried into Hollow Creek would carry her out again. She was folding her spare shirts when Dutch appeared in her doorway. You're leaving. Yes. Because of what happened today? Because nothing I do matters. I can work harder than anyone. Fix the books, gentle the horses, bleed for this ranch. And it won't change what Colt thinks when he looks at me. Dutch stepped inside. You know what happened to him? Elena paused. No. 5 years ago, Colt had a partner. Built Iron Ridge together from nothing. Then Colt discovered the partner was stealing, selling horses under the table, skimming profits, working with Vance to rob other ranches, nearly destroyed everything. Elena's hands stilled on the shirt. Colt testified against him, Dutch continued, sent his own partner to prison, lost half the ranch in the legal mess, had to rebuild alone. That betrayal broke something in him, made him suspicious of everyone. That's not my fault. No. But it's why he struggles to trust you. Not because of who you are, but because of what trusting someone cost him before. Elena turned. That doesn't make it hurt less. I know. Dutch's voice softened, but maybe understanding where he's coming from helps. Maybe it means you don't give up on him quite yet. I'm not giving up on him. I'm saving him the trouble of firing me later when Vance finally convinces him I'm the enemy. Vance won't convince him of anything. Colt's smarter than that. Is he? Because from where I'm standing, Vance is winning. Dutch had no answer for that. Elena finished packing. She'd leave at dawn, ride Ash into town and figure out what came next. Maybe head east, maybe west. Anywhere that wasn't here. Watching Colt look at her like she was a threat he hadn't neutralized yet. She fell asleep still dressed, too exhausted to care. The sound of horses screaming woke her 2 hours before dawn. Elena ran outside to chaos. The main barn was surrounded by riders, 8, maybe 10, all armed. In the yard, Dutch was fighting 2 men. Tyler was on the ground, not moving. Marcus was trying to reach the house. And at the center of it all, sitting calmly on his horse, was Red Vance. There she is, he called when he saw Elena, the widow herself. Elena's heart hammered. What are you doing? Taking what's mine, what Colt Brennan stole 5 years ago. Vance gestured to his men. This ranch, these horses, everything. This isn't yours. It will be when Brennan's dead. The words hit like a punch. Where is he? Main house. We're discussing terms. Vance's smile was cold. Or we were. Now we're just waiting for him to realize he's lost. Elena looked toward the house. Smoke was starting to seep from under the door. You set it on fire. Small one. Just enough to encourage conversation. Vance leaned forward in his saddle. This is your fault, you know. If you'd left when the rumors started, Colt might have survived. But you stayed, made him weak, distracted. Now he's trapped in a burning house because he wasted time worrying about you instead of watching his back. Elena's vision narrowed. Everything Dutch had told her, everything Colt had survived, everything they'd built, Vance was going to destroy it all. And he was using her as the excuse. No, she ran for the barn. Vance's men moved to stop her, but Dutch tackled one and Marcus appeared from somewhere to block another. Elena made it inside, found Ash's stall, and threw open the door. "What are you doing?" Marcus shouted. Elena didn't answer. She opened every stall door, releasing 15 panicked horses into the main aisle. They crashed against each other, terrified by the smoke and shouting. "Elena!" She swung onto Ash bareback and rode straight through the chaos, scattering Vance's men as the other horses followed. They poured into the yard like a flood, bucking and kicking. One of Vance's riders went down, another's horse bolted. Elena didn't stop. She rode straight for the main house, leaped from Ash while still moving, and kicked open the front door. Smoke poured out. Inside, she could hear Colt shouting. Elena dropped low, covering her mouth with her shirt, and crawled through the burning room. She found him in his office, trapped behind a desk that had collapsed across the doorway. His face was covered in soot, eyes streaming. "What are you doing here?" he rasped. "Saving you. Move." Together, they shoved the desk aside. Elena grabbed his arm and dragged him toward the door. The heat was incredible. Her lungs burned, but she'd buried one man she cared about. She wasn't going to bury another. They made it outside as part of the roof collapsed behind them. Colt collapsed on the ground, coughing. Elena turned to see Vance still in the yard, but his men were scattered. The horses had created total chaos. Dutch had gotten the rifle. Marcus had tackled another rider. And then Colt was on his feet, moving faster than Elena thought possible. He crossed the yard and yanked Vance from his saddle before the man could react. They went down hard. Vance fought dirty, elbows, knees, a blade that appeared from nowhere. But Colt fought like a man who'd lost everything once and refused to lose it again. It ended with Colt's forearm across Vance's throat, pressing down until the other man went still. "You done?" Colt growled. Vance didn't answer. Dutch appeared with rope. They tied Vance and his remaining men while the house burned behind them. The barn was damaged, but standing. Most of the horses had scattered but would be found. Tyler was unconscious but breathing. It could have been so much worse. The sheriff arrived an hour later with deputies. By then, the fire was out and Vance was bound and furious. "You have no proof," Vance snarled. "This is assault, false imprisonment." "We have 6 witnesses who saw you attacking the ranch," Colt said flatly, "including your own men who'll talk to save themselves." One of Vance's riders was already talking. Before the sun rose, the whole story came out. The fires, the cut fences, the lies about Elena. Vance had orchestrated everything, trying to break Colt the same way Colt had broken him 5 years ago. "Take him," the sheriff said. They loaded Vance into a wagon. He looked at Elena as they dragged him past. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes," Elena replied quietly. "It is." He was driven away toward town and whatever justice looked like in this territory. Elena watched him go, then turned to find Colt standing behind her. They stared at each other, covered in soot, exhausted, alive. "You came back," Colt said. "I was leaving. Then I heard the horses. You could have kept riding." "I could have." Elena's voice was steady. "But I didn't." Colt took a step closer. "Why?" "Because someone had to prove Vance wrong. He said, I made you weak. That caring about me would get you killed." Her throat tightened. "I needed him to be wrong." "You released the horses, rode through armed men, walked into a burning building." "Yes." "That was incredibly stupid." "Probably." "You could have died." "So could you." Colt's expression cracked, and Elena saw something underneath she'd never seen before. Not suspicion, not doubt, just raw, honest relief. "I'm sorry," he said, "for hesitating, for not trusting you when I should have, for letting Vance get in my head. He was in your head because he knew exactly what you'd lost before. That's not your fault." It is when it nearly cost you everything. Colt stepped closer still. You saved the ranch, Elena. You saved me. And I... He stopped, jaw working. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Trust someone again. Let someone matter. Risk caring about something I could lose. Elena understood. The fear of opening yourself to pain you'd already survived once, the desperate need to protect yourself from another betrayal. She'd felt it every day since Thomas died. I don't know how either, she admitted, but maybe we figure it out together. Colt nodded slowly. Then he did something that surprised her. He reached out and took her hand, carefully, like she might pull away, like the contact itself was dangerous. Elena didn't pull away. They stood there in the wreckage of the battle, holding onto each other while the sun rose over Iron Ridge. The ranch was damaged, but standing. The horses would be gathered. The house would be rebuilt. Vance was gone. And something else had survived too. Something neither of them had names for yet. Something fragile and fierce that had grown between two broken people who'd forgotten how to trust anyone. It wasn't fixed, wasn't perfect, wasn't even close to safe, but it was theirs. And for now, that was enough. The town came to apologize 3 days later. Elena was rebuilding the fence on the north pasture when she saw the wagons approaching. 5 of them loaded with lumber and supplies, driven by people who'd spent weeks calling her a thief and worse. She straightened, hammer still in hand, and watched them come. The shopkeeper who'd refused her service was first to climb down. He looked older than Elena remembered, embarrassment written across his weathered face. "Mrs. Grayson," he said stiffly, "we heard what happened, what Vance did, what you did." Elena didn't make it easy for him. And we were wrong. About you. About everything. He gestured to the wagons, brought materials for repairs, figured it was the least we could do. The woman from outside the church stepped forward. "I'm sorry for treating you the way I did, for believing lies instead of seeing who you really were." More apologies followed, some genuine, some grudging. Elena accepted them with the same careful neutrality she'd learned working with dangerous horses. Acknowledge without rewarding, move forward without forgetting. Dutch appeared from the barn, surveyed the scene, and actually smiled. "Well, this is new." "They brought supplies," Elena said. "I can see that." Dutch walked over to the shopkeeper. "Your lumber any good, or is this the cheap stuff you've been overcharging us for?" The shopkeeper had the grace to look ashamed. "It's good, and from now on, Iron Ridge pays fair prices. You have my word." "Your word and a penny might buy coffee," Dutch replied, "but I'll take the lumber." They worked together that day, townfolk and ranch hands, rebuilding what Vance had tried to destroy. The shopkeeper worked alongside Marcus. The woman from the church helped Elena mend fence. By evening, the north pasture was secure and the equipment barn had the skeleton of a new frame. As the townfolk prepared to leave, the shopkeeper approached Elena again. "There's talk," he said carefully, "about you and Brennan." Elena tensed. "What kind of talk?" "The good kind. People saying you saved his life, saved the ranch, that maybe you're not just a hand here." He cleared his throat. "Town would understand if things were different between you two." Elena's face went hot. "There's nothing different. I work here." "Right, of course." But the shopkeeper's expression said he didn't believe her. "Well, if that changes, just know the town wouldn't judge. Not anymore." He left before Elena could figure out how to respond. That night at dinner, Marcus brought it up again. "Sheriff was asking about you today," he said casually. "Wanted to know if you were staying on permanent." Elena focused on her plate. "I haven't thought about it." "Maybe you should," Tyler grinned, "considering how Colt looked at you after the fire." He didn't look at me any particular way. He held your hand for 10 minutes. He was in shock. We were all in shock, Sam said quietly. None of us held hands. Elena's face burned. Can we talk about something else? But Dutch was studying her with those sharp old eyes. Town's not wrong. Things have changed. Nothing's changed. You walked into a burning building for him. I would have done that for anyone. Would you? Dutch's voice was gentle, 'cause I don't think you would have. I think you did it because somewhere between riding into this ranch on a stolen horse and fighting off armed raiders, Colt Brennan started mattering to you. Eleanor stood abruptly. I'm going to check on the horses. She left before anyone could argue. Outside, the night was cool and clear. Elena walked to the barn not because the horses needed checking, but because she needed space to breathe. Dutch was right. She knew he was right. Something had shifted the night of the attack. Colt's hand in hers, the relief in his eyes, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious he'd almost lost. It terrified her. She found Siren in her stall, the mare's head drooping in sleep. Elena leaned against the door and watched her breathe. This horse had been broken and grieving when Elena arrived. Now she was calm, healing, ready to trust again. How'd you do it? Elena whispered. How'd you let yourself care again after losing everything? Siren's ear flicked, but she didn't wake. I can't lose someone else, Elena said to the darkness. I barely survived losing Thomas. If I let myself care about Colt and something happens... She stopped, because admitting it out loud made it real, made it something she couldn't take back. She cared about Colt, had been caring about him for weeks without letting herself name it, and now the whole town knew before she'd been ready to admit it to herself. Footsteps behind her. Elena turned to find Colt standing in the barn doorway, backlit by moonlight. Heard you ran out of dinner? He said. I didn't run. I left. Because they were talking about us. Elena's stomach tightened. There is no us. Colt stepped inside the barn. No? No? You're my employer? I'm your employee? That's all? That why you risked your life for me? I already told you. You'd have done it for anyone. I know, you said that. Colt walked closer. But I don't believe you. Eleanor's breath caught. It doesn't matter what you believe. It matters to me. Another step. I've been thinking about what you said. About deciding to let someone stand beside me instead of living afraid of being betrayed. Colt, you were right. I was afraid. Still am, honestly. But watching you ride through armed men made me realize being afraid is worse than being alone. Elena pressed back against the stall door. Don't do this. Do what? Act like what happened that night. Change something fundamental. We survived an attack, that's all. It doesn't mean... It means everything. Colt stopped a foot away. You could have left. You'd already packed, but you came back, fought for the ranch, for me. And now you're standing here, trying to convince yourself it didn't mean anything 'cause you're as afraid as I am. I'm not afraid. Yes, you are. You're terrified because caring about someone again means risking the kind of pain you've already survived once. His voice softened. I know, because I'm terrified too. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes. Then why are we having this conversation? Because I'm tired of being afraid. And I think you are too. They stood in the barn, close enough to touch, both of them trembling with the weight of things unsaid. Elena wanted to run, wanted to protect herself, wanted to stay locked safely behind walls that kept out pain and hope and risk, but she was so tired of hiding. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? Elena looked up at him. In the dim light, she could see the scars on his face, the exhaustion in his eyes, the desperate hope he was trying to hide. He looked the way she felt, broken, terrified, willing to try. Anyway, I'm not good at this, she said. Relationships, being vulnerable. Thomas used to say I built walls faster than fences. Good. I need someone who understands walls. Colt's mouth twitched. Someone who knows how to climb them. That's a terrible metaphor. I'm a rancher, not a poet. Elena almost smiled, almost. If we do this, whatever this is, we do it honestly. No hiding, no pretending things are fine when they're not. No. Colt kissed her. It was clumsy and careful, and tasted like smoke and fear and hope all tangled together. Elena froze for a heartbeat, then let herself fall into it, into him, into the terrifying possibility that maybe broken people could build something whole together. When they pulled apart, Colt rested his forehead against hers. That honest enough? He asked. Elena's laugh came out shaky. It's a start. They stood there breathing the same air, holding onto each other like anchors. The barn was quiet except for horses shifting in their sleep. Outside, the ranch spread beneath the stars, damaged but standing, fragile but fighting, held together by people who refuse to quit. People are going to talk, Elena said. Let them. Dutch is going to be insufferable. He already is. And we still have to rebuild half the ranch. We'll rebuild it together. Colt pulled back enough to look at her. If that's what you want. Elena thought about the woman who'd arrived in Hollow Creek 3 months ago. Starving. Desperate. Convinced she was already dead. That woman wouldn't recognize the person standing here now. Stronger, fiercer, willing to fight for something instead of just surviving it. Yes, she said, that's what I want. The changes came slowly after that, not in grand gestures but in small shifts that accumulated like snow before an avalanche. Colt started asking Elena's opinion on ranch decisions instead of just issuing orders. Elena started staying for dinner instead of eating alone in her room. They worked side by side, rebuilding the house, their shoulders brushing, their conversations easy. Dutch noticed first. You two figure things out yet? He asked one morning while they were repairing the porch. Elena hammered a nail with more force than necessary. We're working. That's not what I asked. It's the answer you're getting. Dutch chuckled. Fair enough. Long as you're both happy, I don't need details. We're not. Elena stopped. Were they happy? She wasn't sure she remembered what happy felt like. But there was something settling in her chest that felt close. A quiet certainty, a sense of belonging. Maybe that was enough. The town's acceptance came harder. Some people adapted quickly, treating Elena with respect instead of suspicion. Others took longer, their apologies grudging, their trust conditional. Elena learned to navigate both. She showed up to help with barn raisings, traded horses fairly, kept her head down and her work honest. Gradually, she became part of Hollow Creek instead of just someone passing through. The ranch itself transformed. With the books organized and finances stable, Colt could invest in improvements. New fencing, better equipment, upgraded breeding facilities. Word spread that Iron Ridge was producing quality horses, and buyers started coming from 3 territories away. Elena worked the breeding program with ruthless efficiency. She gave the mares proper rest, adjusted nutrition, monitored pregnancies carefully. By late fall, they had 4 healthy foals and 3 more on the way. We're going to be profitable this year, she told Colt one evening, reviewing the accounts. Actually profitable, not just breaking even. Colt looked at the numbers and shook his head. I can't believe you did this. We did this. You trusted me with the books. After doubting you for weeks. You had reasons. Bad reasons. Colt set down the ledger. I was so afraid of being betrayed again. I almost pushed away the best thing that's happened to this ranch in years. The books aren't that impressive. I'm not talking about the books. Elena's face warmed. 3 months together, and she still wasn't used to the way Colt looked at her. Like she was something rare, something worth protecting. "Stop," she said. "Stop what?" "Looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like I'm special." Colt stood and walked around the desk. "You are special. I'm a widow who showed up with nothing. You're the woman who saved my ranch, who saved me, who turned a dying operation into something sustainable." He pulled her to her feet. "You're brilliant and stubborn and the bravest person I've ever met. If that's not special, I don't know what is." Eleanor's throat tightened. "I'm not brave, I'm just terrified and doing it anyway. That's what brave means." He kissed her then, slow and sweet, and Eleanor let herself believe him. Let herself be special, be wanted, be something more than just the broken woman who'd buried her husband and walked away. Winter came hard that year. The first snow fell in November, blanketing the ranch in white. Elena stood on the porch of the rebuilt house and watched it fall, marveling at how different this winter felt from the last one. Last year, she'd been alone in that shack, freezing and starving. This year, she had warmth, food, people who cared whether she lived or died. Colt appeared beside her, handing her coffee. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Last winter, how close I came to not surviving it." "But you did." "Barely." Elena sipped the coffee, letting the warmth spread through her. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found Ash in that canyon. If I just kept walking that day, you would have found another way. You're too stubborn to quit." "Maybe. Or maybe I got lucky." Colt's arm came around her shoulders. "I'm the one who got lucky. Random widow shows up, saves my best horse, reorganizes my entire operation, and somehow decides to stay. You make it sound simple. Wasn't it?" Elena laughed. "No, it was complicated and messy and terrifying. But worth it?" She leaned into him, feeling his warmth, his steadiness. "Yes, worth it." They stood there watching snowfall over Iron Ridge. The horses were warm in the barn, the hands were settled for winter. The accounts were balanced, everything that had been broken was slowly being made whole. But Eleanor knew better than to trust peace. She'd learned that hard lesson too many times. Good things were temporary, happiness was fragile. And just when you thought you were safe, the world found new ways to hurt you. She was right to worry. The letter arrived in January, delivered by a rider who wouldn't meet Eleanor's eyes. She opened it, standing in the kitchen, Colt reading over her shoulder. It was from a lawyer in the territorial capital. Formal, legal, devastating. Thomas' brother was contesting the claim, claiming Elena had no rights to abandon the land, that it should revert to the family. He wanted restitution, wanted her to pay back taxes on property she'd walked away from, wanted her to appear in court to defend her right to have left at all. "This is insane," Colt said. "You can't owe taxes on land you abandoned." "Apparently I can." Elena's hands shook. "If I don't appear, they'll issue a warrant. I'll be arrested for delinquent taxes and abandonment of property." "How much do they want?" Elena looked at the number and felt sick. "More than I have. More than I could make in 5 years." Colt took the letter from her hands. "We'll fight this." "With what? I don't have money for lawyers. Don't have proof I had the right to leave. Thomas's brother could argue I abandoned the claim illegally and..." Elena breathed. She realized she was hyperventilating. Colt's hands were on her shoulders, steady and warm. "We'll figure this out," he said firmly. "How?" "I don't know yet, but we will." Elena wanted to believe him, but the letter felt like a rope around her neck, pulling her back toward a past she'd fought so hard to escape. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept seeing Thomas's brother, a cruel man who'd never approved of their marriage, who'd called Elena trash for being poor, who'd tried to convince Thomas to leave her. Now he was using the law to punish her for surviving. She found Colt in his office, reviewing papers by lamplight. "You should be sleeping," he said. "So should you." "Can't. Trying to figure out your legal situation." He gestured to the papers. "Talk to the sheriff. He says the claim's weak, but not impossible. If Thomas's brother can prove you had legal obligations to maintain the property, he might have a case." "I signed nothing. Thomas handled everything." "That might be the problem. Without documentation, it's your word against theirs." Elena sank into a chair. "So I lose." "Not necessarily. We can argue you had the right to leave as his widow, that the land was unworkable, that staying would have meant death." Colt looked up. "But it'll require going to court, facing Thomas's family, defending yourself." "I can't afford—" "I can." Eleanor's breath caught. "What?" "I can afford lawyers, court fees, whatever it takes." Colt's expression was fierce. "You saved my ranch, Elena. Let me save you." "That's too much. I can't ask." "You're not asking. I'm offering." He stood and walked to her. "You think I'm going to let some vengeful relative drag you back to a life that nearly killed you? Not happening." Elena felt tears burning. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you matter. Because watching you lose everything again would destroy me. Because—" He stopped, jaw tight. "Because I love you." The words hung in the air between them. Elena stared at him, unable to breathe, unable to think. Colt looked terrified, like he'd just jumped off a cliff and was waiting to see if he'd fall or fly. "You don't mean that," Elena whispered. "I do. You barely know me. I know you better than I've known anyone. I know you're strong and scared and determined. I know you make terrible coffee and you're too stubborn to ask for help. I know you talk to horses like they're people, and you keep everyone at arm's length because you're terrified of being hurt again." His voice softened. "And I know I love you anyway." Elena stood, closing the distance between them. "I'm broken. So am I. I'm difficult. I know. I might lose this court case and have to leave anyway. Then I'll come with you." That broke her. Elena started crying. Ugly, gasping sobs she'd been holding back for months. All the fear and grief and desperate hope she'd been carrying alone came pouring out. Colt held her through it. Didn't tell her to stop. Didn't try to fix it. Just held on while she fell apart in his arms. When she could breathe again, Elena pulled back enough to look at him. "I love you too," she said. "I'm terrified and it's probably stupid and it's definitely too fast. But I love you." Colt kissed her forehead. "Then we'll be terrified together." They spent the next week preparing for court. Colt hired the best lawyer in the territory, a sharp woman named Catherine, who took one look at Elena's case and started building a defense that made Thomas's brother's claim look ridiculous. "They have no documentation you agreed to maintain the property," Catherine said. "No contract, no legal obligation. You were a widow with no means of support on unworkable land. Leaving was survival, not abandonment." "Will that be enough?" Elena asked. "It should be, but courts are unpredictable. We need to be ready for anything." The trial was set for February. Elena spent the weeks before it working herself to exhaustion, partly because the ranch needed her, partly because staying busy kept her from thinking about what she might lose. Colt noticed. "You're going to collapse if you keep this up," he said one evening. "I'm fine." "You're not sleeping." barely eating, your wound so tight you're going to snap. I just need to stay busy. Elena cold caught her hands. Whatever happens in that courtroom, we'll handle it together. What if we lose? Then we appeal, fight it, do whatever it takes. And if that doesn't work, then we leave, start somewhere else, build again. His grip tightened. I'm not losing you to some legal technicality. Whatever it takes to keep you here, we'll do it. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that love and determination were enough to overcome money and law and cruel men who wanted revenge. But she'd learned the hard way that wanting something didn't make it true. The night before the trial, Elena stood in the barn with Ash, brushing the mare's coat in long, steady strokes. The horse stood quiet, patient, like she understood Elena needed the comfort. I might have to leave, Elena told her. If the court rules against me, if there's a warrant, I might not be able to come back. Ash turned her head and nuzzled Elena's shoulder. You brought me here. You know, if I hadn't found you in that canyon, I never would have met Colt. Never would have had any of this. Elena's voice broke. Thank you for choosing to stay that first night, for trusting me. Footsteps behind her. Elena turned to find Colt standing in the doorway. Ready? He asked. No, me neither. He walked to her, took her face in his hands. But we're going anyway. They rode toward the territorial capital at dawn. Dutch and Marcus came with them, witnesses for the defense. The town shopkeeper sent a letter testifying to Elena's character. Even the woman from the church wrote supporting her right to leave the claim. It was more support than Elena had ever expected, more than she thought she deserved. The trial itself was brutal. Thomas's brother painted Elena as a greedy woman who'd married for land and abandoned it when her husband died. The lawyer made her sound calculating, heartless, everything she'd been afraid people thought she was. Then Catherine stood and systematically destroyed every argument. She presented evidence of the claim's condition, medical records showing Thomas's decline, testimony from neighbors who'd watched Elena struggle, a brutal, honest picture of what staying would have meant. Death. Simple as that. When Elena took the stand, she told the truth. About Thomas's illness, about burying him alone, about walking away because staying meant dying with him. Did you love your husband? Catherine asked. Yes. Did you want to leave the claim? No, but I wanted to live more. The judge deliberated for 3 hours. Elena sat in the courtroom, Colt's hand tight in hers, waiting for a verdict that would decide whether her past could destroy her future. Finally, the judge returned. I find in favor of the defendants. Mrs. Grayson had no legal obligation to maintain property. She could not reasonably work. The claim is dismissed. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The words felt impossible. She'd won. Colt pulled her into his arms. Dutch was grinning. Marcus was shaking Catherine's hand. Thomas's brother was already leaving, fury written across his face. Elena stood in that courtroom and felt something crack inside her chest. All the fear she'd been carrying, all the certainty she'd lose everything again, all the walls she'd built to protect herself from hope, they shattered. And underneath was something she hadn't let herself feel in years. Freedom. They rode back to Iron Ridge 3 days later. The ranch looked different somehow, more solid, more permanent. Like coming home instead of returning to work. Dutch met them at the gate. How'd it go? We won, Elena said. His face split into a rare smile. Damn right you did. That night, Colt found Elena on the porch, watching stars appear over the valley. What are you thinking? He asked. That I'm not running anymore. For the first time since Thomas died, I'm not looking over my shoulder waiting for the next disaster. Good. It's strange not being afraid. Colt sat beside her. You'll get used to it. Will I? Eventually? He took her hand. And when the fear comes back, because it will, we'll face it together. Elena leaned against him, feeling his warmth, his strength. I was so sure I'd lose. But you didn't. No, I didn't. They sat in comfortable silence, watching nights settle over Iron Ridge. The ranch they'd rebuilt, the life they'd fought for, the future they were building from the wreckage of everything they'd lost. It wasn't perfect, wasn't easy, wasn't even close to safe. But it was theirs, and that was worth everything. Spring came early that year, melting the snow and turning the valley green faster than anyone expected. Elena stood in the pasture watching newborn foals test their legs, their mothers hovering close, and felt something she'd forgotten existed. Peace. Not the absence of problems, the ranch still had plenty of those, but the quiet certainty that whatever came next, she could handle it, that she wasn't alone anymore. Colt found her there an hour later. Dutch is looking for you, he said. Something about the breeding records. I'll handle it. Elena didn't move. In a minute. Colt stood beside her, watching the foals. What are you thinking about? How different this is from last spring. How much has changed. You changed it. We changed it. Elena looked at him. You gave me a chance when nobody else would. That matters. You proved you deserved it. That matters more. They'd been having variations of this argument for months. Colt insisting Elena had saved the ranch, Elena insisting he'd saved her first. The truth, Elena was learning, was probably somewhere in the middle. They'd saved each other, rebuilt each other, made something stronger together than either could have managed alone. She was still getting used to that. That evening, Colt called everyone to the main house. The hands gathered around the kitchen table, curious and slightly suspicious. Ranch-wide meetings usually meant problems. We're getting married, Colt announced. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then Dutch started laughing. About damn time, he said. Marcus was grinning. When? End of summer? Colt replied. Small ceremony, just family and hands. Tyler raised his glass. Congratulations, boss. You too, Elena. Sam nodded his quiet approval. Even the newer hands who barely knew Elena looked pleased. The ranch had been happier since she'd arrived, more stable. People noticed. After dinner, Dutch pulled Elena aside. You ready for this? He asked. Marriage? I've been married before. Not like this. Thomas was, forgive me for saying it, safe, predictable. Colt's different. He's complicated, damaged, still healing from things that happened before you showed up. Eleanor knew all that. Your point? My point is, marriage won't fix those things, won't make the hard parts easier. You'll still fight, still doubt, still have days where you wonder if you made a mistake. I know. Do you? Dutch's expression was serious. Because I've seen people get married thinking love solves everything. It doesn't. Love just makes you willing to work through the things that would have broken you apart otherwise. Elena thought about that, about the walls Colt still kept up sometimes, the moments when fear made him pull back, the nights he still woke from nightmares about being betrayed. I'm not expecting perfect, she said. I'm just expecting real. Dutch smiled. Then you'll be fine. Planning a wedding on a working ranch turned out to be complicated. Elena wanted simple. Stand under a tree, say words, be done. But the town had other ideas. The shopkeeper offered to host a reception. The churchwoman volunteered to make a dress. Marcus's wife started planning food. Before Elena could protest, the small ceremony had grown into something resembling an actual event. This is getting out of hand, she told Colt one evening. Town wants to celebrate. Let them. I don't need celebration, I just need you. Colt pulled her close. You're getting both. Deal with it. Elena tried to be annoyed but couldn't quite manage it. The truth was, having people care enough to throw a wedding felt strange and wonderful, like being part of something bigger than survival. But the closer the wedding got, the more Elena felt the weight of what she was doing, marrying again, risking everything she'd built on the belief that this time would be different, that Colt wouldn't die and leave her alone, that happiness wasn't just a temporary reprieve before the next disaster. She was mucking stalls 2 weeks before the wedding when Marcus found her. You okay? He asked. Fine. You've been cleaning the same stall for 20 minutes. Elena looked down. He was right. Just thinking. About? Whether I'm making a mistake. Marcus leaned against the stall door. You love him? Yes. He love you? He says he does? Then what's the problem? Elena set down the pitchfork. What if it doesn't last? What if something happens to him? What if I lose everything again? What if you don't? That's not an answer. Sure it is. Marcus's voice was gentle. You can't live your whole life afraid of loss, Elena. That's not living. That's just surviving. And you didn't work this hard to rebuild yourself just to spend the rest of your life hiding from happiness. He was right. Elena knew he was right. But knowing something didn't make the fear go away. That night, she found Colt in the barn, checking on a mare close to foaling. He looked up when she entered. Something wrong? Are you sure about this? Elena asked. About what? The wedding? About me. About us. About risking everything you've built on someone who might... She stopped, unable to finish. Colt stood and walked to her. Might what? Leave? Die? Betray me? Any of it. All of it. I'm sure. He said it simply. I'm sure because I've already lived without you. Spent 5 years alone, trusting no one, building walls instead of relationships. And I was miserable. You were safe. I was dying. Just slowly. You made me want to live again. Really live. Not just exist. His hands cupped her face. So, yes, I'm sure. Even knowing it might hurt, even knowing nothing's guaranteed, I'd rather have 1 real year with you than 50 safe years alone. Elena felt tears burning. I'm so afraid of losing you. I know. I'm afraid too. But we're doing it anyway. That was the truth neither of them could escape. Love meant risk, meant vulnerability, meant opening yourself to pain you might not survive. But the alternative, living afraid, staying closed, never letting anyone matter, that was its own kind of death. Elena had survived that death once already. She wasn't going back. The wedding happened on a Sunday in late August, under the old oak tree beside the rebuilt barn. The same tree Elena had defended during Vance's attack. The same ground she'd chosen to stand on instead of running. The ceremony was simple. No fancy words. No elaborate promises. Just Colt and Elena standing together while Dutch presided, saying the things that mattered. I promise to trust you, Colt said. Even when it's hard. Even when I'm afraid. I promise to let you stand beside me instead of protecting you from everything. And I promise to build a life with you instead of just surviving beside you. Elena's turn. She'd practiced these words for days, but standing there, looking at him, she forgot half of them. I promise not to run, she said. Even when things get scary, even when I want to protect myself, I promise to let you matter, to let us matter. And I promise to fight for this, for us, the way I fought for this ranch. They exchanged rings Dutch had helped Colt pick out. Simple silver bands, nothing fancy but solid, the kind of thing that would last. I now pronounce you married, Dutch said. Colt, kiss your wife before she changes her mind. Colt did. The reception was chaotic and loud and perfect. The town brought food. Marcus played fiddle. People danced in the yard while the sun set over Iron Ridge. Elena stood on the porch watching it all, amazed that this was her life now. Colt appeared beside her. Having fun? Overwhelmed, mostly. Good overwhelmed or bad overwhelmed? Good, definitely good. Elena leaned against him. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. When everyone else looked right through me. For giving me a chance, for... Her voice caught. For making me believe I could have this. Colt's arm came around her. You gave yourself this. I just didn't get in your way. They watched the celebration for a while. Then Colt said something that surprised her. I want to expand the ranch, buy the property to the north, bring in more breeding stock, make Iron Ridge the best operation in the territory. Elena looked at him. That's ambitious. We can handle it with your books and my horses and both of us working together. We can build something that lasts. Something bigger than either of us. A legacy. A family business. Colt's hand moved to her stomach. Maybe an actual family, if we're lucky. Elena's breath caught. They hadn't talked about children, hadn't planned that far ahead. But standing there with his hand on her stomach, the possibility felt real, terrifying and wonderful and real. I don't know if I can do that, she said quietly. Be a mother, after everything I've lost. You don't have to know. Not yet, we'll figure it out together, same as everything else. Elena turned in his arms. I love you. I love you too. Now come dance with me before Dutch drinks all the whiskey and passes out on the porch. They danced. Elena was terrible at it, but Colt was worse, so it didn't matter. They stumbled through the steps laughing while the ranch hands cheered and the town celebrated and Iron Ridge stood strong beneath the stars. Life settled into a rhythm after that. Work, meals, quiet evenings, reviewing books or working with horses. The ordinary dailiness of building a life together. Elena found she loved it. The predictability, the partnership, the sense of working towards something instead of just surviving. The ranch expanded, they bought the northern property and brought in new mares. Elena's breeding program started producing horses that sold for 3 times what they'd gotten the year before. Dutch retired from day-to-day work but stayed on as advisor. Marcus became foreman. And one cold morning in November, Elena woke up sick. She knew immediately, recognized the nausea, the exhaustion, the strange metallic taste in her mouth. She'd felt it before, years ago, on the claim, before the miscarriage that had almost killed her. She was pregnant. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, terrified. The last pregnancy had ended in blood and pain, and Thomas telling her it was probably for the best since they could barely feed themselves. This time was different. This time she had stability, security, a husband who wanted children, but the fear was still there, sharp and immediate and paralyzing. Colt found her like that. What's wrong? I'm pregnant. He went very still. You're sure? Yes. Is that... He stopped, reading her expression. You're scared. Terrified. Last time Elena's voice broke. I almost died. And the baby did die. And I don't know if I can go through that again. Colt sat beside her and took her hands. Then we'll be careful, we'll get doctors, do everything right. And if something goes wrong, don't say if, say when. Because things always go wrong for me. Not always, not anymore. His grip tightened. You survived a winter alone, rebuilt a ranch, fought off armed raiders. You're the strongest person I know, Elena. If anyone can do this, it's you. Elena wanted to believe him, but strength didn't matter when your body betrayed you, when biology and bad luck combined to take everything you wanted. What if I lose this baby? Then we'll grieve together, and we'll survive, same as everything else. What if I die? You won't. You can't know that. No, but I can believe it, and I can make sure you have every possible advantage. Best doctors, best care, whatever it takes. Elena looked at him, saw the fear in his eyes that matched her own, but also the determination, the refusal to let the worst happen without a fight. Okay, she whispered, we'll try. The pregnancy was hard. Elena was sick constantly for the first 3 months, exhausted for the next 3. By the time she started showing, winter had arrived and the ranch was buried in snow. Colt became impossibly protective. He wouldn't let her ride, wouldn't let her muck stalls, barely let her work at all. Elena fought him on it at first, then realized he was terrified too. His way of coping was controlling what he could, making sure nothing hurt her. I'm not made of glass, she told him one evening. I know, but I'm allowed to worry. You're smothering me. Would you rather I ignore you? I'd rather you trust me to know my own limits. Colt was quiet for a moment. I can't lose you. You won't. You don't know that. No, but neither do you. Elena took his hand and placed it on her swollen stomach. Feel that? She's strong, fighting, just like her mother. She? I think it's a girl. Don't ask me how I know. I just do. Colt's expression softened. A daughter. A daughter who's going to grow up watching her father panic every time she falls down. Probably. Definitely, Elena smiled. But that's okay. Better you worry too much than too little. The labor started on a February night during a blizzard. Of course it did. Elena had learned by now that nothing in her life happened easy. The doctor couldn't make it through the snow. Colt sent Marcus riding anyway, just in case, but Elena knew this baby was coming now, with or without help. I need Dutch, she gasped between contractions. Dutch isn't a doctor. Dutch delivered foals for 40 years. He knows what he's doing. Get him. Dutch came. Took one look at Elena and started giving orders like he was running a complicated breeding operation. Boil water. Get clean cloths. Somebody find whiskey in case we need it. Colt stayed by Elena's side, holding her hand, while she screamed through contractions that felt like they were tearing her apart. The pain was incredible, worse than anything she'd survived, worse than she remembered from the miscarriage. Something's wrong, she gasped. Dutch checked. His expression went grim. Baby's breech. We need to turn her. Can you do that? I've done it with horses. I'm not a horse. No, but the principle's the same. Colt, hold her still. What followed was agony. Dutch working to turn the baby manually while Elena screamed. Colt holding her, whispering things she couldn't hear over the pain. The world narrowing to nothing but survival. Then, suddenly, impossibly, there was a new sound. Crying. A baby. Crying. Dutch held up a tiny, red-faced, furious infant. It's a girl, and she's got a set of lungs on her. Elena started laughing and crying at the same time. Colt was shaking. Dutch was grinning. The baby kept screaming like she was offended by the entire experience of being born. She's perfect, Elena whispered. She's loud, Colt said. She's ours. They named her Hope. Not because Elena was sentimental, but because it felt true. This baby was hope made flesh. Proof that broken people could build something whole. That starting over was possible. That the worst winters eventually ended. The first weeks were brutal. Hope cried constantly. Elena was exhausted. Colt was terrified of holding something so small. They stumbled through it together, neither of them knowing what they were doing. Both of them too stubborn to quit. Dutch helped when he could. Marcus's wife came by with advice. Even the town women showed up with food and hand-me-down baby clothes, and the quiet solidarity of people who'd survived this particular challenge. Slowly, impossibly, they figured it out. By spring, Hope was sleeping through most nights. Elena was recovered enough to return to light work. The ranch was running smoothly under Marcus's management. Everything had changed and somehow nothing had. Elena still worked the books, still gentle, difficult horses, still made terrible coffee that Colt drank anyway. But now she did it while wearing a baby in a sling Dutch had rigged up. Hope would sleep against her chest while Elena worked, her tiny heartbeat a constant reminder of what they'd built. One afternoon in late April, Elena was in the barn with Hope when Colt found her. "Come outside," he said. "I want to show you something." Elena followed him to the north pasture. There, grazing peacefully, was Ash, and beside her, a newborn foal with the same grey coat. "She foaled this morning," Colt said. "While you were working, I wanted you to see." Elena walked closer. Ash nickered a greeting, and the foal looked up with curious dark eyes. Mother and daughter, together, just like Elena and Hope. "She's beautiful," Elena said. "She is, and she's yours, your horse's daughter, your breeding program's success." Colt put his arm around her. "Everything here, the ranch, the horses, this family, you built it. We built it. You started it. That day, you freed Ash from the canyon. That was the beginning." Eleanor thought about that day. How close she'd come to walking away. How easy it would have been to let nature handle the trapped horse. How different her life would be if she'd made that choice. "I'm glad I stopped," she said quietly. "So am I." They stood there watching the horses. Hope gurgled against Elena's chest. Ash nuzzled her foal. The ranch spread around them, alive and thriving. Years passed. Hope grew into a fierce, stubborn child who rode before she could walk properly. The ranch became famous for producing the finest horses in 3 territories. Elena's breeding program was copied by other ranchers. Colt expanded into training, teaching people how to work with difficult horses the way Elena had taught him. Dutch lived to be 83, still giving advice nobody asked for and everyone needed. Marcus became part owner, building his own legacy alongside theirs. The town that had once rejected Elena eventually made her part of the town council. Iron Ridge thrived. But the real success, Elena learned, wasn't measured in horses sold or money earned or recognition gained. It was measured in the quiet moments, in Hope's laughter, in Colt's hand finding hers across the dinner table, in waking up beside someone who knew all her scars and loved her anyway. It was measured in survival that became living, in fear that became courage, in brokenness that became strength. One evening when Hope was 5, she asked Elena a question. "Mama, were you always brave?" Elena thought about the woman who'd arrived in Hollow Creek, starving, terrified, convinced she was already dead. "No," she said honestly. "I was scared for a long time." "What changed?" "I decided being afraid was worse than being brave, so I did scary things anyway." "Like what?" "Like staying when I wanted to run, like trusting people who could hurt me, like letting myself hope again, even when I thought hope would destroy me." Hope considered this. Did it work? Eleanor looked around, at the ranch they'd built, at Colt working with a young horse in the corral, at Dutch dozing on the porch, at the life she'd fought so hard to create. "Yes," she said, "it worked." That night, lying in bed beside Colt, Elena thought about everything that had led her here. Thomas's death, the terrible winter, finding Ash, meeting Colt, fighting Vance, the trial, the wedding, Hope's birth, all of it connected, each piece necessary to create what they had now. "You awake?" Colt asked. "Yeah." What are you thinking about? How strange life is, how many things had to go wrong before they could go right. Colt pulled her closer. You regret any of it? Elena thought about that. The pain, the fear, the nights she'd been certain she wouldn't survive. If she could go back and avoid all that suffering, would she? No, she said, 'cause avoiding the bad would have meant missing the good, and the good is worth everything. Even the fear, especially the fear, because being afraid meant I had something worth protecting, something worth fighting for. Colt was quiet for a moment. I love you. I know. I love you too. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, two broken people who'd somehow built something whole. Outside, the ranch slept, horses dozed in their stalls. The night sky stretched endless and bright. And somewhere in the barn, Ash stood watch over her foals, the same way she'd been watching over Elena since that first day in the canyon. Some things Elena had learned were meant to be, not because fate demanded it, not because destiny forced it, but because when you're broken and desperate and fighting just to survive, sometimes you stumble across something worth rebuilding for. A horse, a ranch, a person, a life. And if you're brave enough, or maybe just stubborn enough, to hold on to that thing even when everything tells you to let go, sometimes you end up with more than survival. Sometimes you end up with home. Not the place, the feeling, the bone-deep certainty that you belong somewhere, that you matter to someone, that the worst winters you survived weren't endings, just transitions into springs you couldn't imagine when you were buried in snow. Elena Grayson had arrived in Hollow Creek with nothing. She'd left behind everything she'd lost and walked into an uncertain future with only grief and determination to guide her. But she hadn't stayed nothing. She'd become the woman who saved Iron Ridge, who built a breeding program that changed the industry, who married a broken man and helped him heal, who raised a daughter to be fiercer than fear, who turned a dying ranch into a legacy that would outlast them all. She'd become exactly what she needed to be. Not perfect, not unscathed, not without scars or doubts or moments when the old fear came creeping back, but strong, real, present, alive in ways that mattered. And on the nights when doubt whispered that she didn't deserve this happiness, Elena would walk out to the barn and find Ash, the grey mare who'd started everything, who'd chosen to stay when Elena expected her to run, who'd trusted a broken woman to save her, and in doing so had saved that woman right back. They'd stand together in the darkness, woman and horse, survivors both, and Elena would remember something she'd learned the hard way. Being broken doesn't mean being finished. Sometimes it just means you're being rebuilt into something stronger than you were before. Something that can weather worse storms. Something that can carry more weight. Something that knows exactly what it costs to survive and refuses to waste the life that survival earned. The people who make it through the darkest winters aren't the ones who were never cold. They're the ones who learned to build fires, to find shelter, to keep moving even when every step hurt. They're the ones who, when given the choice between giving up and getting stubborn, chose stubborn every single time. Elena had chosen stubborn, and it had saved her life. Now she was teaching Hope the same lesson, not through words, but through action. Through showing her daughter that fear was normal, but courage was necessary. That failure happened, but quitting didn't have to. That love was risky, but loneliness was worse. That sometimes the best thing you could do was save a trapped horse and see where it led you. Hope would have her own battles someday, her own winters to survive, but she'd face them knowing her mother had survived worse, had built something lasting from nothing, had proven that broken beginnings didn't dictate finished endings. That was the real legacy Elena was leaving. Not the ranch or the money or the famous breeding program, but the proof that you could lose everything and still build a life worth living, that you could be shattered and still heal, that you could trust again after betrayal, love again after loss, hope again after despair. That being the person everyone wrote off as already dead didn't mean you had to accept that diagnosis. You could fight back, rebuild, become something they never expected. And when you looked back at the woman you used to be, starving and desperate and certain she was finished, you could recognize her pain without being consumed by it. You could honor what she survived without staying trapped in her fear. You could thank her for refusing to quit even when quitting would have been so much easier. And then you could keep moving forward, keep building, keep fighting, keep choosing life over survival, hope over safety, connection over isolation. Because in the end, that's what separated the people who made it from the people who didn't. Not luck, not advantages, not the absence of hardship, just the stubborn, bleeding, desperate refusal to let the worst thing that happened to you be the last thing that defined you. Elena Grayson knew that lesson well. She'd earned it the hard way. And every day she woke up at Iron Ridge, beside the man she loved, raising the daughter she'd fought to bring into the world, working the land she'd helped save, was proof that earning it had been worth every impossible step. The widow of Hollow Creek had become the heart of Iron Ridge Ranch, and she wasn't finished yet.